Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we are back on Sulky Hulky. I'm going to give you a really quick update. I'm going to pool the caches, but this week we are going to be building a deck list around the pool 3 card Dracula, and then the rest of the deck we're going to fill in with pool 1 and pool 2 cards. So let's pull any of the cards that I unlocked this week. So we ended the last video at collection log level 707. Ooh, and we get Destroyer, not bad. 707. This week we are now 812, so we jumped quite a few collection levels. And then Crossbones. We jumped quite a few collection levels. Oh, and then Captain Marvel. But I've slacked on Sulky Hulky this week. I have not grinded any of the weekly missions this week, so we are going to be just a little bit behind. Ooh, and then we get Doc Ock, the Disruption King, and then Polaris as well. My goodness, we are getting very lucky with our cards. Now, these are not like the heavy hitters like we were getting before, and then Typhoid Mary, she's a tough one to use. But we stayed exactly the same rank that we were last week, but we do have some pretty nice pool 3 cards. And so looking at the pool 3 cards that we have now, this week we are going to be building one over Dracula, but if you guys see a pool 3 card that we've unlocked that you want a pool 1 and pool 2 primary focus deck list built around with the kicker of the 1 pool 3 card, so like the 1 Magneto or the 1 Mysterio that fit into that deck list, let me know which one you guys are most interested in seeing. Alright, so we did end up drafting a deck list, and this is actually the second iteration of this deck. The first time around, instead of Bishop, I ran Khazar, but that made our curve just a little bit too high for the potential value that you get out of the card. And so I did swap it. I went ahead and scrapped all of the other videos. And so we are going to go ahead and run through this deck list really quickly. Overall, it works pretty well. There are some particular deck lists that you're going to want to watch out for. If it is a common Killmonger deck, you are probably going to want to go ahead and retreat and then just reset. This deck list does work. I used it on my main account a little bit. It does work all the way through the collection log. You just have to use it strategically to push your advantage, snap whenever you know you have both Dracula and Infinaut, and if you are in an advantage mismatch, knowing when to retreat and then just reset. And so running through the deck list really quickly, we have Ant-Man, who is a low cost. A lot of this deck list is going to be low to the ground cards. We have Ant-Man, who is going to become a 1 cost 4 power card because most of the time we are going to cap out almost all of our lanes, if not all of our lanes, as long as the locations and the spacing allows. We have Elektra. This is going to help counter any decks that run a Sunspot and they're wanting to buff him up over time. This is going to be able to counter and swing those locations, or you can steal away locations, key locations like Mojo World. If they have a 1 cost card, you can drop Elektra on the last turn and swing that card count advantage in your favor, resulting in a 100-point win. We have Hawkeye, who is going to be a decent card once you play a card in that lane afterwards, but it does telegraph our next move. And so it could be a little bit bad if they end up doing something like a Rocket Raccoon, a Mantis, that gives them almost exact knowledge of where we're going to play next turn. And so they could easily trigger those if they have them. We have Iceman, who is going to be a good card to cause disruption for the opponent. It is going to potentially break their card curve, making it awkward to drop the cards that they want to in order to trigger their combo. We have Korg. Whereas Iceman is a more instantaneous result, Korg can potentially block them from drawing their key combo pieces by shuffling a rock into their deck list. We have Nightcrawler, so Nightcrawler is going to be able to be played and then moved into a location that is a little bit more advantageous or efficient for him. We have Rocket Raccoon, he's going to be able to be played. We want to hold this card most of the time until we know or can reasonably guess at where the opponent is going to drop their resources so that we can get the upside of his on reveal ability. And then we have Angela. When you play a card here, you're going to get +2 power. You are most of the time going to want to drop her as the first card in a lane, and then follow up with 3 other cards to make her a 2 cost 7 power card, which is a huge return for the mana cost ratio. And then we have Bishop. If you have a lot of low cost cards and you don't have your higher 4 cost cards in hand already, sometimes you can withhold some of your resources to drop Bishop before you start flooding the board, and then you can buff up Bishop to a pretty large point. We have the bread and butter of this deck list. We have Dracula. Dracula is going to be able to cheat either Chavez or the Infinaut onto the board after the last turn ends. That means he's not going to be able to be Shang-Chi'd. He's not going to be able to be hit with something like Enchantress or Cosmo. They're not going to be able to stop his absorption of that power. We have Chavez, who is going to help ensure we get our lower cost cards early, and is going to be a pretty reliable drop on turn 6, where we can push 9 power, or if we have both her and Infinaut, we can push 29 power on the very last turn. And then finally we have the Infinaut. The Infinaut we are going to want to cheat onto the board in most games and in most scenarios. There may be a game or two where we want to skip on turn 5 and then drop the Infinaut naturally, so maybe there is Sinister London, which doesn't double discard our Infinaut, since he doesn't come back into our hand. So maybe we skip turn 5 so that we can drop a 40 power play on turn 6 instead. But overall, the deck list is very straightforward. It is a lot of low cost, one cost cards, so that no matter what order you draw your cards into, you should be able to reliably trigger the Dracula Infinaut interaction to get some huge upside in those games. And so with the general rundown out of the way, we are gonna go ahead and jump into a few games. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so first up we have Frozen Turkey, and the first location is Kamar Taj, which is decent for our Iceman. That means it is going to increase the cost of 2 cards or potentially 1 card by 2 from their hand. So a Devil Dino can go from a 4 cost card all the way to a 6 cost card. And it's important to note that a card cannot go above 6 cost with Iceman. With something like Baron Mordo, it can, but with Iceman, it is capped at 6. Ooh, and so then we get Olympia, which causes us to draw into 2 of our cards. And so we are definitely going to want to flood our resources as quickly as possible here. So we're going to drop Angela first. Next turn, we will drop into either our 3 1-cost cards, or we will do Bishop first. We'll do Bishop first in Kamar Taj, and then we'll flood the board next turn with our 4 1-cost cards, unless we draw into Dracula, and then we'll do Dracula plus 1 of our 4-cost cards, and then on turn 5, we'll flood the board. And so depending on what we draw into, and what this location is, that's kind of rough, the Space Throne. But we do draw into Dracula, which is good for us. That is exactly what we need. We can do Dracula here. Next turn, we could do a Hawkeye, and then we could do 1, 2, 3. We are going to be able to just barely have enough space to play all of the cards that we want to. But we do know that next turn, actually, we're going to have 1 card too many. It's going to either be a coin flip between Infinaut and Chavez, or if we hold and play Chavez, then it will be a coin flip between a 1-cost or a 1-cost card and the Infinaut. Ooh, and so Arnim Zola comes in, and it is huge for us. That it tells us a lot of information. So Jubilee is going to end up going into the Space Throne. So that is a 1-cost, a 1 power lane. And so now we know that all we have to do is guarantee that we get at least 2 power in the Space Throne. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't retreat here. If I was them and if I was in their shoes, I would absolutely retreat. And so we are going to cap out the Olympia lane, and then next turn we will kind of see where we're at, see if we want to play into Kamar Taj, if we want to play into Olympia, if we want to kind of gamble depending on if we want to hold the Electra and just drop our Chavez naturally, or how we want to play that piece. And so while we're waiting for the interaction to finish, I did want to say thank you to Andro K. Guz. They recently became a channel member, which enables them to have several different cool emojis. We're continuing to create and develop new emojis all of the time, and they are constantly in our comment section, analyzing our plays, kind of picking our brain, and then questioning where we may have not played efficiently so that I can continue to improve as a content creator. And just for their knowledge, they know if maybe their thinking was off as well. But thank you so much, Andro, for the support and for joining us as a channel member. So we are going to go ahead and drop our Electra into the Olympia lane. We do lose 1 power from the Nightcrawler, but we gain 2 power from Angela and then 1 power from Electra. So that should push us up to 17 here. That will allow us to guarantee that our Dracula is not going to draw into the Electra. It is a little bit safer of a play for us. And then they are going to drop their Hela to resummon the Black Cat in Kamartage, but that's not going to be enough for them. So we are going to bounce up to 17 with the Electra. My math is off. So my math is awful. We were at 15. The extra 1 between the +2 that we get here and then the 1 extra we added in would bring us up to 16, not 17. We got very, very lucky that this did not summon into something larger. We probably should. We didn't deserve to win that one. We did play it safe, and it did draw into the Chavez. So if it had drawn into our Electra, we would have tied this lane, and then it would have came down to a tiebreaker in Olympia. But we did squeak that one out. We are going to go ahead and jump into the next one and see how that one goes. All right, so next up we have Conqueror 777. And in this game, we may actually be able to drop our Infinaut naturally. By skipping on turn 5, we could drop him on 6, which would allow us to drop Chavez and then something else on 7. We didn't go ahead and play Korg on the first turn because we have that extra turn. I don't think there is any rush to push as much power as humanly possible out onto the board. They did drop an Iron Fist, so that tells me they probably have a move style deck. Either that or it's the bounce style deck where they're going to pull these cards back in with Beast and then be able to re-drop them to re-trigger that Human Torch movement. And so so they have initiative. At some point we will likely drop our Electra to try to destroy the Human Torch, but I do think they end up pulling it back in to their hand this turn. So we are not going to push that this turn. It looks like we probably could have, but it is the 50-50 split. I would like to be able to isolate it if at all possible to make sure we know that it is going to destroy the Human Torch, because that has the most chance at a really high upside. So they do drop a Bishop, which does tell me it's most likely the bounce style deck where they're going to be pulling these cards back into their hand. And so I am going to drop Dracula into the Savage Land. That way we don't have to worry about Bishop growing over time. He shouldn't be an issue at all. So they do drop a Cloak, so they are going to move some cards around. And so then they drop a Black Widow, which does clog up our board. And this is definitely the bounce style deck list that we played before. So we could skip now and then play Infinaut and Widow's Bite next turn. I'm actually curious how Chavez works with this interaction. Actually, no, I don't think we need to. We're going to go ahead and play the Widow's Bite. We are going to move Korg over here, if for no other reason than to allow us to drop an extra resource into the limbo location. And then we are going to hold our Electra still. We want to try to hold it and drop it strategically. So they will likely move their Human Torch this turn, maybe even do a Beast here to pull all of these cards in this lane back in. That will allow them to drop their Iron Fist here to push their Human Torch over, but they do have an Iceman, so we're not going to be able to guarantee what Electra hits here, and they have a Korg. Okay, so that makes it a little difficult, but we do know that they're not going to be able to move it a whole lot. Maybe we end up abandoning this lane if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to compete for it. And so maybe we do Nightcrawler over. We drop Chavez here. I anticipate that they will push the Human Torch, but maybe we can cap it out instead. Or do we compete for Murder World instead? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We will leave Nightcrawler here. That way we can move him if we need to. We will drop Chavez in the middle location so that we can try to be competitive there. I anticipate that they do push their Human Torch. Maybe they drop a Cloak here, which will then be able to pull their Human Torch back over if they feel like they need to be competitive in Murder World. And so the good thing about this deck list is that they are going to have initiative going into the last turn here. So their cards, if they move them around, we will get the first shot at them. And so we are going to go ahead and just do our Hawkeye, our Electra. Right now we are hoping that they move just their Human Torch over to win this lane. Would they do that though? Would they move their Human Torch again to make sure that they win this one and then drop Chavez here? So if they do that, that's 15. That ties this lane as it is now. But if that's the case and they drop Chavez here, then we know that we will come up over their power level. Potentially they move Bishop. Okay. I think they moved their bishop over, knowing that Dracula is going to be a big unit here. So let's go ahead and move our Nightcrawler over. We drop our Electra. No. Let's go ahead and move our Angela. Let's move Electra, then that. That will give us a good shot no matter what they move here at winning Murder World. If I don't know. Oh boy, the movement could catch us here, depending on what they move over. So they move their Human Torch. That is the only 1-cost card in the lane. We got the read absolutely correct here. Electra is going to destroy the 32 power Human Torch. Very, very lucky that that is what they decided to move over. We do have a 23 power lane in mid. We're going to have a 22 power lane in Savage Lands for another 4-cube victory. But looking at it, had we kept everything here and moved Nightcrawler over and then just dropped a resource in this lane, we would have came up over them in Limbo as well and stuck the win in Savage Land. And so I think we thought a little bit too hard on it. Somebody on our last video said whenever you overthink an exam answer and you're just back and forth, we do end up doing that sometimes. That was the most accurate comment I've ever seen. All right, so next up we have Tifife, and in our starting hand we do have Iceman. We have the cloning vat, so we'll be able to drop cards multiple times. I don't know if we necessarily want to. We are going to drop this first one at least an additional time, but depending on what we draw into, we may want to shy away from doing that because we don't want to end up being to the point where we can't drop all of our resources because the biggest thing we are going to want to do with this deck list is guarantee that we pull into our Infinaut with Dracula. So let's go ahead and play the Ant-Man. We're going to play Hawkeye naturally into the unknown location. That is going to allow us to follow up this next turn. We are not going to be able to follow up this next turn. So this one becomes much more difficult now because we're not able to dump our cards into Hellfire Club, and if we play them here we will have to move them. This one looks like a hard retreat, guys, a very hard retreat because we get Bishop, great, we get Angela, great, Dracula will duplicate. So we will play it by ear here. We'll see what we draw into. If we can draw into Dracula, so we do get an Angela. So far so good. We want to try to keep our hand size as small as possible. And then if we get a Dracula, we'll play it into Cloning Vats a couple of times, or at least once, and then the second time over in Hellfire Club to potentially give us some good upside, but we don't get it, do we? So we can skip this turn. We can play our Infinaut naturally, but if they drop like a Devil Dino here, we are out of luck entirely. So they extend the game by 1, and we can play our 1-cost resources into this lane again. It's kind of fortunate for us. So we can do Infinaut, we can clone him back into our hand. Next turn, if we draw into Dracula, we can drop Dracula here and then drop like a Korg. That way it has only 2 potential targets that it can draw into, either the Chavez or the Infinaut. So they do drop an Iron Man. So if they drop their Devil Dino here, that's huge. And we do get the good RNG of the Dracula play. We're going to go ahead and drop our Korg here. We may just very well squeak this one out, and we don't deserve this win. Dracula will either draw into Chavez or Infinaut here, and then we have a small amount of power in this lane. It's nothing huge. It's not going to be anything great, but I mean, they're going to have to split their power here. So they do, okay. So they do Shang-Chi, which takes out our Infinaut. We are going to potentially draw into our Infinaut, which would win us Limbo. It comes down to the 50-50 coin flip here. Can we get lucky and discard our Infinaut? If we do, we win. If we don't, we lose. Dang it. Okay. We still almost came out and won, even with the Chavez instead of the Infinaut, but unfortunately the Shang-Chi was really great, and unfortunately we just weren't quite able to do it, but it was incredibly close. That was a very tough matchup with the locations as they were. We still almost got lucky, but in the end just barely fell short. All right, so next up we're going to have Scary Terry. We are going to drop Korg as our first card. We're going to send them a rock into their deck. We hope that they end up drawing it instead of one of their key resources here. And so on our next turn, we do have Hawkeye and Nightcrawler. We're going to play both of them into the Mirror Dimension. And then on turn 4, we will probably play our Dracula into the Space Throne. That way we can get a good idea of what power level we need to draw into to determine how we need to play the last couple of turns. And so they do put a mojo. So they are anticipating that we cap this location out. And maybe we do, but I'm going to go ahead and play Electra into the Dark Dimension. We're going to leave Nightcrawler so that if we need to move him out on the last turn, we can, to drop our Chavez. Oh, and then they give us a Maximus, which is absolutely not what we want to see. But Mirror Dimension copies into one of the other locations, and it copies into Space Throne for us, which is huge, because now they're not able to play any additional cards. If we moved a card out, we still wouldn't be able to play anything in there. So we're going to leave Nightcrawler here. That way we have the advantage in the Space Throne. All we have to do now is win in Dark Dimension. And so to do that, all we have to do is skip on turn 5 to be able to play our Infinaut into the Space Throne naturally. So I'm going to go ahead and play our Angela and our Rocket into this lane. Let's go ahead and snap on Scary Terry. We will skip turn 5, and they do end up retreating. With them not being able to push anything additional here, we were going to be able to play our Infinaut into the Space Throne or into Dark Dimension, depending on where we wanted to, but most likely into the Space Throne. And unless they anticipated that and dropped a Shang-Chi in the Space Throne, which would have destroyed our Infinaut, then we would have been fine. But we also had a decent power push into the Dark Dimension, so I think we would have been okay either way. All right, next up we have Onrak the Broken, and we do have Korg in our starting hand. More importantly, we have Dracula and the Infinaut, so we know that we're going to be able to get that interaction to trigger. I would have snapped off of turn 1, but I did want to wait at least a small second before we ended up doing that. And so now I think I'm going to play Rocket and Ant-Man into this far left lane, into the Citadel. If the big house shifts over into the left lane, that's great for us. If not, then it's not as great, but we still may be able to recover from it. So I am going to drop our Angela. Next turn, I will drop our Dracula into the Atlantis, the current Atlantis lane. It will flip and switch over time. Now we're going to go ahead and snap. They do have a Daredevil, so maybe they have a Professor X that they're going to want to try to sneak, but they're not going to be able to sneak the Professor X in a Dracula lane because he will still discard at the end of the game and absorb that power. If he does it in one of the other lanes, then we just know that we need to push in whatever lane is left, but ideally it's somewhere where we can dump a lot of resources. Oh no, so they make us discard our Infinaut. Oh, that's awful. That's just awful. You know, why do you have to be so rude? And so we're going to go ahead and still play the Dracula into Atlantis here. Very, very unfortunate that they had a Moon Knight that was created. No way. It was created by Agent 13. Agent 13 absolutely stabbed us in the back here. So we're going to go ahead and, you know, actually this doesn't feel incredibly great. So if they have a Hobgoblin, because of the Daredevil, we know that they discarded their Professor X. If they have a Hobgoblin, they can't play it here. They can play it in Atlantis, send it our way. We'll be able to move our Nightcrawler, but overcoming that amount of power is going to be really difficult. And so then we have our Nightcrawler, we have the Hawkeye, and is this a Hobgoblin coming? No, it's a Wave. Very interesting. So do we think we fake them out with the Dracula? We end up playing our Chavez naturally into Atlantis to try and get the win. We also move our Nightcrawler over to get the bonus from Ant-Man. And then we just leave the Citadel unattended. Just Dracula, the frail Dracula that is not going to have anything to draw into. I think that's what we're going to gamble with. It is a dice roll. I think we have a good shot in the big house. Atlantis is the big question mark, though. I think we have a good shot at winning it. I think we have a better shot at winning Atlantis than letting our Chavez or playing our Chavez into the Citadel. There we go. So they do just drop one card, which is a leader, which we get the additional upside from Angela. So because we played our Chavez in the Angela lane, it gets a +2 power bonus. Because we just moved our Nightcrawler over into the big house and didn't play a card there, the leader is actually not an ideal play for them there, and it ends up not being enough to win them the game. So we do squeak that one out as well. All right, so next up we have Conqueror 777. We're going to play our Iceman into Stark Tower right off the bat to disrupt their draw line. They do have a Sunspot here, so he's going to be able to grow over time. That is a snap. So they played the Sunspot into an unknown location, which did end up being bar with no name. So the person that has the least power in that location is the one that wins. And so because they cannot fully remove that power unless they had a Killmonger, they just end up losing a location. They would have to win the other two, which is really difficult to do, and it's almost not worth risking an additional cube for. This deck can be ran even into the max collection levels. It's just you have to be very cautious against what you're playing against. If it looks like they're going to be able to push a lot of power onto the board, you have to strategically retreat, conserve, and play defensively to conserve your cubes whenever you don't have a great advantage. And then whenever you do, you press your advantage. If it doesn't look like they're going to be able to have a really big turn 6 play, maybe they're running something like a leader that is going to draw into your Chavez, but you're going to be able to pull power in with Dracula. It can win some games at the max collection. You just have to be very strategic about how you approach it. I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know what you guys thought of this kind of direction of the Sulky Hulky videos, where we pull one of our pull 3 cards, and we build a pull 2 deck around it, and then we run it up against opponents to see if we can be competitive in the matchups that are against people that are already into that pull 3 collection. And so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.